I'm Richard Taylor from the Philosophy Department at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and together with my colleague Andrea Robilio at the Catholic University of Leuven, we present this course on Thomas Aquinas on Metaphysics. This is video 11b, fall of 2013, and 11a went a bit long, almost 45 minutes, because it's rather complex material that's being explicated, namely the commentary on the De Hypnomodibus by Aquinas. And we're going to continue now with that. I've got just a few more slides. I'll try to get done with this in about 15 or 20 minutes. But let's proceed then in some detail. So we're continuing on the De Hypnomodibus chapter 2. So in his commentary, Aquinas next speaks of a double to be, or a double essay. Here he refers to substantial and accidental being. Substantial being when the form constitutes the essence of the thing. Accidental being when it is outside the essence as qualified being, to be something as to be white, and so forth. He then goes on to distinguish to be in a subject in an unqualified way as participating the abstract being itself from being something. Distinguishes those two then. The abstract being itself as participated, and then from being something. Again, the distinction here is that between substantial and accidental being. This he further explains when he writes the following. First, it is necessary that something be understood to be without qualification. So that's the abstract being. And afterward, that it be something. And this is clear from the prior statements. For something is without qualification thanks to the fact that it participates in being itself. So it's unqualified there. But when it already is, namely through participation in being itself, it remains that it can participate in something else with this result, that it can be something. So we have to have substantial being, and if it's something as substantial being, then it is able to have accidental being and participate in that. Now he then goes on to assert a real distinction to be present in concrete things. But let's pause just a moment. What he's doing here in the commentary on the De Hypnomodibus is explicating complex notions and concepts, and the relationship of concepts to things in reality. He's not doing demonstrations here. He's explicating the doctrine, the metaphysical doctrine that he holds. And also he's explaining how to use properly metaphysical language and to keep clear abstractions from realities, the clear distinction of abstractions and realities. Now here he says the following. Therefore it must be considered first that just as to be and what is differ according to intention, that is, there's a conceptual difference between the two of them, so in composite items they differ in reality. Now remember we've already spoken about composite items, and those composite items can be of two sorts. They can be immaterial entities, which are composites of to be and what is, or they can be natural material items, which have a twofold composition in themselves, a composition of form and matter, and a composition of essence and existence. So here Aquinas writes then, to start again, therefore it must be considered first that just as to be and what is differ according to intention, a conceptual distinction, so in composite items they differ in reality. Now he's setting this up because this is going to mean that all other things than God are composite items in reality. So only in God will there be an identity of to be and what is, or an identity of essence and existence. He goes on, this in fact is manifest from the prior remarks, and of course certainly it is. For it was said above that to be itself neither participates in anything, so that its character would be constituted from many, nor does it have anything extrinsic admixed, so that there would be accidental composition with it. Therefore, to be itself is not composite. It's not a composite thing. And therefore, a composite reality is not its own to be. it receives its to be from outside, has a cause to be inside it, so to speak. And so, I'm starting in there, and therefore a composite reality is not its own to be, and so he, Boethius, says that in every composite it is one thing to be a being and another to be the composite itself, which is by participating in being itself. All right, so the composite thing exists by participating in being itself. And there's a distinction then between the thing that participates in being and the being that it participates in. There's not an absolute identity. Were there an absolute identity, then there would be perfect simplicity. But it's not the case, he says. So what about this simplicity I just mentioned? If we consider things with a real distinction, such as this that he's just expressed, they do not possess perfect simplicity, though they may have a degree of simplicity. Even what lack composition, then, such as immaterial entities, angels, and other things, at least according to the doctrine of Aquinas, even what lack composition do not have perfect simplicity. I quote him, "Therefore, if there should be found certain forms not in matter, and an immaterial intelligence or an immaterial angel would be a form without matter," he continues, "each one of them is indeed simple, in that it lacks matter, and as a consequence, quantity is also lacking in it, which is a disposition for matter, or of matter, pardon me. Nevertheless," he goes on, "because every such form you like is determinative of to be itself, not one of them is to be itself, but rather is what possesses to be." Close quote. Let me unpack this last sentence here, just to be very clear about what he's doing. So form is determinative of the being that is received. So the actuality of being is received into the form of a tree, and together the two of them are composed, and they become the individual tree actually existing. But these things are none of which is exactly to be alone, but rather they possess or have being. All right, so in this sense, then, even things that do not have perfect simplicity, such as immaterial entities, nevertheless in them there is a composition of essence and existence. He doesn't use those terms exactly here, but that's what he's referring to. So it's not identical with its existence. The word identical, it would be its existence. And the word identical, its existence could never be separated from it, if it were absolutely identical to it. But that's not the case. It receives it. And the existence received is then manifested as the particular essence manifested in the world. So the essence of tree is manifested in the world is this tree. And the tree next to it is another manifestation of the essence of tree, but it's different. It has a different existence. The existence in the case of each one is different, because when the existence is received into the particular, it's received as a determinate existence. That's why he uses that term determinative. It's important that it's determinative of it. And so the entities in general don't exist, not as universals in that sense. What exists are particulars that receive being or existence from a cause by way of efficient causality. Now that he does not explain here, but in fact that's his teaching. Only God then has this perfect simplicity that Aquinas is talking about, because even angels and other things that don't have composition in their composition with matter, nevertheless still have a composition of what we can call essence and existence, if we keep in mind the De Ante Essentia. So he says the following, quote, "But that alone will be truly simple which does not participate in to be." All right, so God does not participate in to be. Not inhering, in fact, but subsisting. So God is the to be. There is a complete simplicity and identity of divine essence and existence. This, however, can be but one, writes Aquinas. For if to be itself has nothing else admixed other than that which is to be, so it's only the to be, only, to use the Latin, only esse. As has been said, then it is impossible that this to be itself be multiplied through anything diversifying it. Well, because it's simple, and it's just that to be. So there's nothing diversifying it. And because it has nothing outside itself conjoined, it's just itself and just to be, it follows it has it follows that it is susceptible of no accident. This simple, one, and sublime is God himself, writes Aquinas. So the argument here is that in this case there's a perfect simplicity, and if God has to be and there's perfect simplicity, then there's a perfect identity of God's to be and God's essence. Now, when this account of simplicity has established that there is this one instance of perfect simplicity, then Aquinas has explained that the perfect simplicity, that is God, is the unity of being itself in a single reality lacking all composition. And as a real thing, not an abstraction here. We're not talking about an abstraction, ipsum esse as an abstraction here. We're talking about ipsum esse as a reality. This is ipsum esse as a reality from which all others participate being to exist in reality in a concrete way. Now, what about our missing participant in this discussion? How is this kind of esse participated? Well, certainly it's participated through efficient causality. And we've had already looked and seen quite a bit on efficient causality and the causing of existence by Avicenna. And we've seen that Aquinas adopts a great deal from Avicenna in the De Ante et Essentia. And here, without mentioning Avicenna's name, he is implicitly drawing upon the Avicennian approach, but he had established that himself earlier. As Professor Robilio showed, I thought, and explained quite nicely, that this is a much more carefully done and sophisticated discussion of the conceptualization and notions of being in relation to reality than we find in the De Ante et Essentia. There is a certain naivete in the De Ante et Essentia with regard to some of these notions, a certain lack of full appreciation of the complexity of what's going on. Now, as you know then, Avicenna provides an argument from common conceptions, and he also reaches a first simple being, namely God. Final slide then. So as we've already seen, Avicenna holds that all things receive the necessity of existence or being from the first cause, who is itself pure being and the necessary being which grounds all other things. For Avicenna, in contrast to Aquinas, who follows Boethius and Augustine in the use of the language of participation, Avicenna himself avoids that language, but he still teaches a doctrine similar to that of Aquinas. For God is also the good, the simple, the existent, through which all other things exist and are what they are. Now I'll stop here because I've already gone quite long enough, but there is a bit more of the chapter chapter 2 that's worthy of having a look at, but I will stop here for time, and since this already seems to serve our interests pretty well. And we're done with, this is the end of 11b, video 11b.